Hello everyone, I'm Igor Gavrishchak, and this is Channel 24 on YouTube. Today is Friday, May 2nd, and with us is political technologist Mikhail Scheitelman. Mikhail, congratulations! Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Hello, Igor. As always, I encourage viewers to stay active. You'll find a link to Mikhail's resource in the description. Check it out for more on current events, especially today. Don't forget to subscribe to Channel 24. Mikhail? To start, the Framework Agreement on Rare Earth Resources has been signed, and the bill has been introduced in the Rada. Some say the vote will be delayed, others think it'll happen quickly. Experts in Ukraine are discussing these agreements right now. What is known next? Official reports from Ukraine and the U.S. The White House said that they will jointly manage the fund, but most importantly, the U.S. has the priority right to buy out rare earth resources. In this context, there is news. Press Secretary Marco Rubio said that the U.S. is changing its status in the negotiations. Now they will not actively intervene, but are waiting for proposals from Ukraine and Russia. Jay Devins also said that there is a big gulf between Ukraine and Russia in their goals regarding the war and what they will build for the next 100 days. Can this all be reconciled? And can we say that Trump got his way, signed the Rare Earth Agreement, and now he roughly doesn't care? As for rare earth metals, we have achieved our goal. The idea came from Ukraine, although it originally came from Senator Lindsey Graham, who more than a year ago said that Ukraine has trillions of dollars worth of resources, 10 to 15 trillion in the form of various minerals, and that we could jointly develop them. That could be America's interest in Ukraine. Let me remind you of the chronology. In October 2024, President Zelensky went with a plan called the Victory Plan, first to Europe, then to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. There were 2 points in this plan, clearly addressed to Trump, as they were in line with his statements. The first was about Ukrainian troops in Europe, not yet realized, and the second was about joint mining, which was aimed at attracting Trump as a businessman. He was interested in us. This idea did not come from the American administration, but was proposed by us.
Мы его заинтересовали, он не сам это придумал, это не американская администрация придумала историю про редкоземельные металлы, а придумали мы.
When the negotiations began, both sides began to defend their positions. In the first version offered by America when Besson arrived, Trump claims that Zelensky slept through the meeting, but in fact, he simply refused Besson, saying that Ukraine is an independent state and will not sign such terms. The second attempt at pressure from Trump was a month and a half ago, when they again tried to impose America's terms on us, but we stood on our red lines. If you look at the signed agreement, we fully defended all our key demands. The first key line is that Ukraine does not recognize debts for past arms deliveries. The first version of the treaty said that we owed $350 billion. The second version said $123 billion. And the final version, signed this week, says zero. We owe America nothing for past supplies. It's a huge diplomatic success to defend such a large amount. The second thing we defended is that all of our agreements are for new licenses only.
Это то, что все наши договоренности будут касаться только новых лицензий.
It's very important. Everything that it says about joint development. Why, for example, today Reuters is reporting, for example, that the first profit will be in 10 years. Not for Ukraine, but in general. Why is the government saying that this will start working in 6 months? Because we are talking about new fields that are not being developed now. This requires huge capital investments. We cannot afford such investments. So American companies have to invest billions of dollars in Ukraine to start production. We have many fields, but we do not have the funds to develop them. These are big risks because the money will have to be invested for years ahead. The second condition, which we have defended, is that only new licenses are required, and all this is explicitly spelled out. The third requirement is that budget revenues should not be affected. At present, part of the budget is formed from the revenues of the oil and gas industry and taxes from operating fields. It will not affect our revenues. We will not lose a penny or a step as far as the budget is concerned. If you look at the treaty, you might be surprised at how much we have been able to defend everything. As far as management, we have refused to allow America to solely manage the fund. The result will be 50-50, but that is less important for now because we haven't gotten to that stage yet. At this point, the contract is only phase 2. The first one was 1 page, and the second one that was signed recently is 12 pages, and there will be a total of 90 pages in the contract that will spell out all the details. So there will be a third contract as well. The second one was signed hastily, given Trump's 100 days. Now about the priority right to buy back U.S. metals. This is a working point, and I explain how it works, for example, using the example of the gold industry, where I once worked. Here you are an owner, or you mine gold. You have mined gold, it has an exchange price. No one can deceive you and tell you that your gold is more expensive or cheaper. There is a stock exchange. We go in and look. Gold costs, for example, $3,100 per ounce. Accordingly, I, as a miner, will sell it for that price. But here is the paradox. Gold costs $3,100, but it is difficult to buy it. Many countries want to buy it, and different buyers come at you. For example, the Swiss, who ask for the right of priority redemption at this price, so that we sell to them and not to the Japanese. Why is this clause coming up now? I don't know if it's in the contract, but it's not that important. The Chinese, as you heard, have stopped supplying rare earth materials to America because of the 125 to 145% tariffs. America wants to guarantee these supplies, and it will buy them at the exchange price, the same price at which we would have sold them anyway. America claims that we are obligated to sell to it, not China. It is not explicitly written in the clause, but it is implied that we, not the Chinese, will be the ones buying. After we, in conjunction with the Americans, extract the scandium, we will sell it to America, but at the same price we would have sold it to China. That's all there is to the treaty. Mikhail, thank you very much for the clarification. It is really important because what I asked you about the first right to sell sounded to me, as well as to many, not knowing the nuances of the exchange and the terms of purchase and sale, as, yep, you have first right, it's ours. Thanks again for the explanation. I also asked about the statement by Tammy Bruce, the State Department spokeswoman, who said that the U.S. was ending active negotiations and changing its attitude toward Russia's war in Ukraine, no longer being a mediator, but waiting for offers from Russia and Ukraine. But after all, Ukraine has had its own offer for a long time. Oops, I have a feeling J.D. Vance watched me for the first time yesterday. Because yesterday, yes, he had already watched it. Those golden words you said, I also voiced in yesterday's edition. Why? We were told that now Ukraine and Russia should make their proposals for a peaceful settlement. I thought, wait, we have already made a proposal, and not yesterday, not under pressure from Trump, but from the very beginning of the war. We have a simple proposal, 3 points, no more. The first is to withdraw all Russian troops from the occupied territories of Ukraine. This is not difficult, a clear and understandable point. The second is to pay us reparations in the amount of $3 trillion, which corresponds to the damage that Russia has caused, including future consequences, such as injuries to people, suffering of children, and so on. That adds up to about $3 trillion.
Получили травмы там и так далее на всю жизнь, и дети пострадали и так далее. То есть все вот это в сумме где-то россиянам обойдется в $3 триллиона.
And the third is the extradition of war criminals, also an understandable demand. All those who committed crimes, from Putin to the soldiers who robbed stores. That's it. We have no other demands, just 3 points, and peace will come. That's it. We have our proposal for a peaceful settlement. What's the other one for? Here it is. Russia also has its own conditions. Give us all of Ukraine, the Baltic states, remove NATO from Europe. We offer one thing, they offer another. What are we talking about? When I said that yesterday, I thought, how can you demand new proposals from us? And what will it change? In the evening, according to our time, J.D. Vance repeated the same thing. We have proposals, both from Ukraine and Russia. Next, he says they'll spend 100 days trying to reconcile these proposals. We'll let them try, although, of course, it's not very funny for us.
Следующие, говорит, 100 дней мы потратим на то, чтобы их сблизить, эти предложения между собой. Ну, к сожалению, хоть это и не очень смешно для нас в результате, ну, пусть попробует сблизить эти самые предложения.
I personally don't see how these positions can be brought closer together. If people were telling the truth, not what you have to say on the 100th day of Trump's presidency, they would say, in 100 days, we have brought nothing closer, no progress, nothing at all. I and 2 others don't see that progress. Kuleba first said in a more politically correct way that there has been no rapprochement, no progress in negotiations in the last 4 months. That's true because the negotiations started 4 months ago and there is no result. In fact, there's been no progress in 3 years. Republican Senator John Kennedy has also been outspoken. In an interview on Fox, the host asked, I honestly don't see the results of the negotiations. When Trump says there are agreements with Putin or a common platform, I don't know what he means.
Джон Кеннеди, который очень четко тоже сформулировал. Он говорит, ведущий, это все на канале Fox происходило, а ведущая сказала что-то типа, слушайте, я, говорит, честно говоря, вообще не вижу, в чем результаты переговоров и в чем, когда Трамп говорит, что есть договоренность какая-то с Путиным или нашли с Путиным какие-то общий язык, общую платформу.
Where is it all? The host asked, to which John Kennedy replied, I totally agree with you. I don't see anything either. He added that Putin's latest peace proposal was nothing. Putin said, you will get nothing. I will not retreat in anything. I will not liberate the occupied territories. I will not return the stolen children. I will not pay compensation. In other words, Putin's offer is simply nothing. From this, John Kennedy concluded that it is not worth trying to persuade Putin, but to turn Russia and Putin into fish food. Mikhail, with your permission, I would like to add the words of President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan. He too said that he does not see the war ending. President Aliyev knows what he is talking about. He has been in office for more than 20 years. And all these years, except for the last 2, he has been engaged in restoring the territorial integrity of his country.
Он посвятил, за исключением последних 2, восстановлению территориальной целостности своей страны. Причем 18 эти лет велись, до 2020 года, когда он стал президентом.
Probably since 2004, although I could be wrong. And from that time until 2020, he was negotiating about 17 years, trying to solve the Karabakh problem. Since 2003, to be precise. During those years, not a single millimeter of land has been returned to Azerbaijan, and territorial integrity has not been restored. Although one can argue about the terms occupied or not occupied, the fact remains that these territories were not de facto part of Azerbaijan. When the war started, everything was restored in 3 years. Today, it is perceived as a miracle in Azerbaijan, and everyone considers the restoration of territorial integrity as a merit of Ilham Aliyev. When the situation with Karabakh, Armenia, and Azerbaijan was in a deadlock, Karabakh was proclaimed independent, but even Armenia did not recognize it. Nevertheless, the issue was resolved, and Ilham Aliyev, seeing all this, speaks as it is.
Объявляют Ильхаму Алиеву восстановление территориальной целостности, то есть это было воспринято как чудо. Но когда позиции Карабаха, Армении, Азербайджана, ну там, я сейчас осторожно говорю, потому что Армения же не считала, что это она, да, владеет Карабахом. Это как бы было провозглашено как независимое государство, которое даже Армения не признавала. Но тем не менее были все эти контактные группы, Минская контактная группа, и что? Куда-нибудь кто-нибудь куда-нибудь вернулся? Нет. Поэтому Ильхам Алиев говорит, как видит и как есть.
In your opinion, what does the notion of return of the occupied territories by diplomatic means mean? For me, it is a veiled form to say the following.
Для меня это специальная такая завуалированная форма сказать следующий примерно текст.
Yes, we understand that these territories will now be occupied by Russia. If we cease fire, it means that we will not have the right to destroy the occupiers in these territories. We are destroying them now, but tomorrow we will not be able to. This, of course, is a big problem. But on the other hand, there will be no losses, because there will be no war. This is the ideal. So how do we get the territory back? We will have to wait for a better moment. Why didn't Ilham Aliyev use troops in 2010 to liberate Karabakh? Because he didn't have enough forces. Back then, Russian troops in Armenia were strong, and the Azerbaijani army was not yet ready to storm the mountainous region, especially against Russian units. But in 2020, the situation changed. Russia weakened in the region, while Azerbaijan, on the contrary, strengthened its position by entering into a strategic alliance with Turkey and Israel.
Однако в 2020 году все было уже не так. Россия ослабла там в регионе, а Азербайджан, наоборот, набрался сил, потому что вступил в стратегический союз не только с Турцией, но и с Израилем.
He built drone factories and more, and when the political situation presented itself, he vacated those territories. Notice no one objected, didn't sanction Azerbaijan for doing so, despite the ceasefire treaty of the 80s or 90s. But since it was their territory, the restoration of territorial integrity was legal, and there were no objections. In 2020, they partially liberated territory, such as Susa, but other regions remained under Armenian control, such as Lashin and Konkendi. It was only in 2023, when Russia weakened and brought its troops to the front, that Azerbaijan completed the process and Karabakh capitulated.
И потом в 23-м году, когда Россия уже по-настоящему, вот прям по-настоящему ослабла, или в конце 22-го, когда россияне уже забрали свои войска оттуда, сюда, к нам на фронт, то азербайджанцы за один день закончили этот вопрос, и Карабах капитулировал.
This means that we have to wait for the moment. These territories are still ours. They are fixed in international documents. Secondly, these territories have such a status that no company traded on major international exchanges will be able to work there. Russia will not be able to attract investors, as it does now in Crimea. Airlines will not be able to fly there because sanctions will be imposed. It is very important that for Russians, these territories are a burden, not an acquisition. They will need to maintain the occupied territories. No airplanes flew to Karabakh, as you can guess, and no one invested in it while it was under foreign control. Remember the case of the blogger in Belarus who was extradited to Azerbaijan for illegally visiting Karabakh. Ukraine will demand extradition of those who will illegally visit the occupied territories. We will have to wait for Russia to change its position. Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia waited 45 years after the occupation to free themselves, despite the fact that no one recognized them as occupied. But they waited for their moment.
Ну что ж, дождемся. Знаете, Латвия, Литва, Эстония ждали после оккупации 45 лет, чтобы освободиться. Но никто не признавал их оккупированными. И они дождались своего момента.
Mikhail, here's the question. Keith Kellogg says that Ukraine has supposedly agreed to 22 points, but no one is announcing them. Earlier, there was talk of de jure recognition of Crimea as Russian by the United States, so that it could then lift sanctions and lobby the European Union to do so. To what extent can this path of diplomatic liberation of territories lead to the fact that Russia, already out of isolation under Trump, will continue to build up its potential? We realize that Russia is not interested in not a part of Ukraine, but the whole of it.
Що познімають санкції, і Росія буде нарощувати свій потенціал, ми ж прекрасно розуміємо, що її не цікавить частина України, а вся.
These were all the wishes of the Russians. We know that. But where is one real step in this direction? Trump has repeated several times that he does not want us to recognize Crimea, and both Ukraine and Europe have refused to recognize it. Could America recognize Crimea? Theoretically, yes, but it would be meaningless for Russia. The U.S. would recognize it, but the rest of us would not. A simple example. The U.S. recognized the Golan Heights as part of Israel. But goods from these territories do not have access to European markets, because for Europe they are occupied territories. It's the same with Crimea. Russians are unlikely to be happy if only America recognizes it. A plane from Simferopol will not fly to Washington, right?
Для европейцев это оккупированная территория, для американцев это территория Израиля. Вот. И та же самая история с Крымом. То есть вряд ли россияне сильно порадуются, если их только Америка признает. Самолет же из Симферополя до Вашингтона-то не долетит, правильно?
He would have to fly through Europe or other countries, and that would be forbidden. But the main thing is that no one took that step. We are discussing that, yes, Stefan Witkoff asked to recognize Crimea because that was Putin's wish. I'm sure that was indeed his wish. I mean, he said, why do you need all this Russian-speaking stuff, referendums, and so on? But here we open the day before yesterday's issue of the New York Post, a Republican-supporting newspaper. There's a big article about Witkoff, with a clear attack on him. Murdoch's newspaper, which supports the Republican Party, publishes a piece that contains all the negative facts about Witkoff, his pro-Russian behavior, and quotes those who said something about him.
Корреспондент в Вашингтоне пишет большую статью, где собирает все гадости правительства, известные до сих пор, и его поведение пророссийское и так далее, все цитаты из всех, кто про это что-нибудь говорил.
The article mentions Witkoff's conversations with Tucker Carlson, but the reporter immediately notes that Witkoff forgot to mention how the Russians deported Ukrainians from these territories, forced them to speak Russian, and brought in Russians. All of this was not a referendum, but took place at gunpoint. It is a struggle to drown out Witkoff and his ideas, and so far it has succeeded. If we, God forbid, signed something like this, it would be like the oil fields story. Remember when we signed the 57 Minerals Treaty? We did it on terms that were favorable to us from the beginning. We were told a lot that we would be cheated, but we signed on our own terms. So it is likely to be the same here.
Ну, мы же подписали на тех условиях, которых мы хотели изначально. Поэтому, что посредине-то переживать? Нас так стращали, что у нас все отнимут, а подписали на наших. Да, поэтому и здесь также будет, в принципе, наверное.
I also want to mention sanctions. Temi Brew, the State Department spokeswoman, said that the U.S. has no plans to lift sanctions on Russia. Lindsey Graham, for his part, has repeatedly said that he has a bill that more than 60 senators support. Now, he notes that 72 senators support sanctions against countries that would buy oil and gas from Russia, even with duties of up to 500%. Here's the interesting thing. Trump was enacting special economic status to regulate customs tariffs by executive orders without Congress. Why not apply that to sanctions as well, as Leader Seacrest suggests? Going through Congress would make it harder to lift sanctions. But if you threaten sanctions, why not do it by Trump's executive order? Trump has the authority to do this by executive order. He's already done it in regards to Iran, literally tonight. While I don't know if he signed the executive order, he wrote on social media that if he replaced the word Iran with Russia, it would be the perfect move for Russia. which would be very isolated. So far, U.S. relations with Iran and Russia are different. Iran has been America's enemy for 45 years, and with it it's simple: total isolation and total sanctions. In the case of Russia, unfortunately, the world is not yet on the same page. Graham, for his part, initiated this story to show the Senate's position. We support Trump, but we also want to show the world and America that the majority of senators think it is necessary to isolate Russia in this way.
Мы хотим показать, в том числе, позицию Сената миру и Америке, что вот Сенат вот так считает, что у нас есть большинство сенаторов, которые считают, что Россию надо изолировать вот таким способом.
This is all being done in support of Trump, not against him. Senator Graham is acting this way in supporting Trump because many of these senators are gearing up for elections a year from now. They want voters not to ask them, "Where were you when Russia was killing people in Kiev, Sumy, or Kryvyi Rog?" And they can answer, "Here, we voted for 500% tariffs." This is important for Republican voters. For them, Russia is the enemy, especially for the large Christian community that supports Trump. Russia is the absolute enemy ever since the Soviet Union, which to them was an evil empire. Many who support Trump voted for Reagan, or their parents did. So Russia will always be an enemy to them. And the Senate shows, we remember that Russia is the enemy.